Thank you. We're recording.
Yeah, we are recording.
Okay. Um, so yeah, it's one of the prerequisites, I think, of doing this is a huge education piece.
Mhm.
Because not only do we need to have an intellectual understanding of those universal laws, but we need to be integrating them in our own world because we've got to be living them uh, in order to birth anything that is founded in that. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So it's a big deal. It's a big issue. Not an issue really, but it's a good challenge to be willing first to say, all right, I want to know what the rules for the road of this life are.
Mhm.
And and how can I be the embodiment of that? It's kind of like St. Francis's prayer. Let me be a vehicle, an instrument of peace. Let me be an instrument for compassion. And I had an uncle who spent most of his adult life trying to create a conscious community.
Mhm.
And he was so desperate to do it that he would take anyone who would listen to him and start the community. And it never worked. And after decades of him doing that, he was really frustrated and disappointed. And I looked at him and I said, you can't start a conscious community with unconscious people. You have to educate them. They have to understand the purpose for all of this. What is being conscious? What is the difference between what I'm doing now and really coming from my heart and living in a conscious way? So it doesn't just happen because we have a new set of rules to go by.
Mhm.
It's more complicated than that. And that's why I'm just offering this class for free, because the more people who get it, the more people we can work with to do exactly that, to create consciousness. And I mean, we don't create consciousness, we become it. But to create conscious community, we have to start somewhere, and starting at a conscious plane is critical.
Right.
So, how does that tie in with? I know that there's been a lot of preparation and work done before I came into the picture, so I would like to hear more about that.
Yeah, last week the discussion was all about how would you organize yourself from the bottom up, for dealing with watersheds, dealing with ecosystems, dealing with the planet, right? So so really looking at the Aquarius model of economy as opposed to the current model, which is more top down. And we also talked about um, Shelley's work
Mhm.
uh, on deconstructing democracy and codes for a healthy earth and the world water law. And we were talking about the idea of uh, trying out a constitution on a project like world water law, trying to get
Mhm.
world water law implemented, and how would you coordinate our actions to do that, and
Right.
and then refine our constitution as we do that. So that was the kind of extent of the discussion that happened last week.
Mhm.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, just before this meeting, like just less than 10 minutes ago, I was talking to a water testing company because the well where we are has gone dry 3 times over the summer.
Mhm.
And that's never been an issue in this area. There's always been a great amount of water here. And now the wells are going dry. Neighbors' wells are going dry. And I was talking to this guy, and he said that when there is blasting, underground blasting to create new housing developments and basements and do all of that, it changes the water table. Because I said to him, we've never had a problem with water before. I don't understand why now. And he said that with all the developments going in, it's changing the aquifers underneath, the flow of them. And it's like, wow, that's that's a big deal because we're disrupting nature in a really big way.
Right.
And so convincing developers that they, if they're going to be part of this world water law thing, they can't be doing underground blasting or the frackers who are, I mean, it's a huge issue, um, and it's workable. We can get to where we want to go. The question is just what is the most effective, efficient, and productive way to do it.
Right.
So the education piece, we're starting. We're creating recordings of this, and I'm working toward putting this out as an online course.
Mhm.
And once we have it, hopefully it will take hold. But that's just one piece of the beginning. So
Right.
do you have any, or anyone here have any sense of um, this education piece, which is really a fundamental? We've got to start somewhere, and education is key because
Well,
it's the
I
only
sure
way we
do.
can do it. Mhm.
I sure do. I'm just going to refer to the purpose of my website is to do just that, is to bring
Yeah.
people in to co-collaborate and co-create things like a new constitution, to have those voices heard, their concerns heard, their perspectives shared, and to operate like a co-creative, cooperative community, and then to have these organizations fall in line, some kind of alignment and take steps and draw those people in. And it goes around in a very broad circle. It starts, whatever trickles into me goes through Jamin and goes through these Zoom meetings and whatever. And we just grow the community that way, because we've got all these like ways of sending our signal out and drawing people in through all these different platforms.
Mhm.
So, online classes, your Zoom meetings, things like these things have to build out. If anybody, I would just encourage anybody in this meeting to take a look at the chat, because I'm trying to take notes as long as we go, and I can start a document or something, or I can even open a page on the website to have these discussions, and then we'll have some kind of documentation or reference, for how do we build, just a page that says, hey members, how do we build a new constitution? We've got the world water law over here. We got compassion currency over here. Here's somebody talking about the Hopi traditions, interdependence, working with life, or working with earth, and earth gets a voice, and what's true democracy look like, and then come together and have these meetings and grow this out and actually formulate something. We could put something together in writing, share it, be it part of the total picture of this grassroots movement of, a unified step forward in this new lane, where we've actually turned everything that we learned on its head, because we've been walking on our palms, for so long.
Yeah.
So, so I'm going to offer that up, just for people to come together. And if you want me to start a document, or for people to submit their ideas to me, and let me start a page where these voices can come together, and we can expand these Zoom meetings and really get, our tribe together, our council together for this, and draw more people in, more voices in, and find out, okay, what's the common thread that we can work around in this century based on these traditions and the truth, because it's all about the truth, how things really work, right? Not our little house of cards that we built from our egos that's like now being torched, right? So we can't even fight that. We have to leave it to crumble. We have to disempower it, walk away, and create our own lane. So I'm just
Well,
going to throw that out to the
yeah.
group. Go ahead, Deb.
No, that's part, and that's part of the issue, because anyone who is coming from ego is feeling that fire, is feeling the intensity of that fire. And that is creating a whole nother level of suffering on the planet. And so offering compassion, offering a safe place it's such a fine line, because we don't want people on here voicing their ego minds and their anger, but yet at the same time, that's a natural part of this process that we're in, is that anger and fear is up for everyone.
Well, it may motivate people to participate and say, I'm done. You get to a point where you're angry enough and you're saying, why am I fighting City Hall? City Hall can blow up on its own, and even if you
It'll blow
don't,
itself up.
let me give a little gasoline on the city. You know what I mean? I'm dropping out. I'm just dropping out. And I'm going to check out, hey, what's the source of the anger in me? Well, you know what? It might be my soul crying out for, hey, this way is over. And I need to, humanity's got to go up a couple of notches, right? Till we get to the compassion based. That's where, so yeah, we're all falling apart. We're all breaking up. We're all deconstructing. Those who aren't, or those are whose Domino's time is to stand up. And I can speak for myself because I'm being pushed. Right. So it's my turn. Some of you here present might have had you're already erect, or you might have come in this time already erect in that to show the way, like the way for the rest of us who have to catch up or whatever. But every time one of us stands up, it's like the reverse domino. The other ones are attracted there. And every time you move forward on the wheel, you create a vacuum and another one goes into that vacuum. So it is kind of a chain reaction, and it is spreading. Every little bit of consciousness that you get affects how many people. Right? Because once you take that on, right? So that's the way it is. So we're just drawing people into this lane. But it's like, what are the components of this lane that we want to have, and how do we formalize that? Because we could be walking on a new planet, on a new earth, literally a new earth in a couple of years, because we've created it. Do you understand? I mean,
yes,
a new physical earth that we've created. So things like this, are not beyond the pale of what creation can do, and when the light is drawn into creativity. So what do we do with people in pain? We send that. We say, come on here. We got you. Here are some tools for you. Here's your support group. Here's your community. Here's some new ideas. What do you think about this? Turn yourself upside down. Turn all that anger upside down. Say, screw this anger. I mean, the anger might have gotten me to this part. What am I going to do to heal myself from that? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start working on behalf of nature and a community that I'm part of, and share my gifts. And that's going to get me out of anger or pain into action. Right? And that's going to light me up.
That's it.
Okay. So that's what I'm suggesting.
That make any sense? Sorry, what?
I don't know. I had coffee this morning, guys. I had some coffee and it was decaf. And this is what happens.
No, it's beautiful. And you're right on track. So being a place where people can come to see what else is possible. There is a breakdown happening that is absolutely necessary, and it's time for it. And I think what's happened with other civilizations in the past that have disappeared from the planet is that the breakdown started and fear took over and the breakdown completed. Boom, done. But we are birthing the potential for the breakdown to shift to the breakthrough.
Right.
And the only way we can do that is to continually recognize fear, meet fear in the face, and transmute it. And so if we can create a place where people can come and recognize that there's another way, that fear isn't the only option in the breakdown process, and show them what the breakthrough can look like, then they have intrinsic motivation to say, oh, Buckminster Fuller's statement, don't try to change the system,
right?
The old system, create a new system that makes the old system obsolete. And that's what we're all about.
Right. And I would say
we can easily make the old system obsolete as we move forward in the plans that are unfolding now.
Melvin, you had something
to say? The fear. I'm sorry, Sailesh, go ahead.
I thought Melvin had his hand up.
I'm really enjoying the conversation. It's right in alignment, with my thoughts and, my aspirations. Yes.
Melvin, can you always smile? Because you have the most beautiful smile.
You know what?
Just a beautiful smile.
That. And
I'm going to pin you. I'm pinning you now to the center of my.
Okay.
So be careful. I'll meme you. I'm going to meme him.
May I share a story?
Sure, please.
Please do. Yes.
When I was a kid, white people used to always say smile. And I didn't understand why they wanted me to smile, because I didn't feel like smiling. But now I feel like smiling. There was so much anger. There was so much recognition of white supremacy and racism and inequality in me I didn't know I didn't understand it. And I didn't understand the dynamics of it. I didn't know where it was coming from. It was pervasive. It was everywhere. And that's why I didn't smile. So my not smiling, I think, was a natural reaction to something that was overwhelming, so powerful, that was oppressive, that I didn't understand. And it was a defense mechanism so that I can cope. But now I do smile. And I just wanted to share that story. So I do smile and thank you.
So, Melvin, if I could, I would love to hear what shifted you from being angry and not understanding and just feeling overwhelmed by the pervasive white supremacy and the greed that goes with it. What shifted you?
I tell you, it's and I could share this here. I had a very an experience, and I lost all my freedom. It was snatched away from me in a very, let me say, ugly way. And the whole circumstances and how I lost my freedom was it just was not nice. It was ugly, and I was incarcerated, and I was for a very, very long time. And in my incarceration, uh, I read the first book that I ever read in my life was the autobiography of Malcolm X. I was 18, I think I was 19 years old, the autobiography. And reading that book, had such a profound and powerful and pervasive influence on my psyche, on my soul, on my well-being. His story and his redemption, his transformation. That's what started the process. That's what did it for me. And I was in a very bleak place. I was in a cell that was, you could stretch your arms out, touch the wall. You could stretch your arm out and you could touch the back of the wall. And I was in for 24 hours, 22 hours, about 23 hours a day. And reading that book, it transmuted me. That's the word I just learned from you, from your thing. It transmuted me. I started reading other books of men of color who changed the world, rose up against colonialism and fought against white supremacy and racism. And then, in addition, understanding, getting into the history of American history, particularly the Atlantic slave trade and American slavery, not just American slavery, seeing the oppression and the exploitation that happened to the white immigrants that came to this country, their horrific condition, and the oppression and the exploitation that they endured, and what happened to the native people here, the indigenous people here, and then learning about what happened to the land and all the animals over here. And I said, wow, that impacted me a lot. And I think what shifted me is that I didn't want to be a part of that. I didn't want to be a part of that anymore. I wanted to be on the other side of history. And seeing that Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Che Guevara, what these men, that they told stories of love. They told stories of life. If you read their writings, it was a story of life, and I like that because I had been filled with these stories of death, of these stories of limitation, of suffering, of denial of life. But these men were telling stories of life. And one thing that really, story that really brought me up, all of them was when I read The Long Journey by Mao Zedong, The Long March. And this guy started out when he was 15 years old, fighting against oppression. And it took them years, but they eventually, liberated the country. And his stories about all these men of color who rose up against white supremacy and oppression and wanted to have a new beginning for their people. That's what helped to ameliorate my anger and help me see a new vision and a new pathway forward. That, and then in addition to the support that I got from people uh, that I, through correspondence, also I met some awesome people that through correspondence that gave me inspiration and hope uh, in a sale that never seen, or never knew them, and the books that I read that was all about salvation. And one of the guys I read was really a lot was Eric Fromm. I read his book, Destructive of Human Anatomy. I think that was Eric Fromm and all of his works. And he was also telling a story of life, of healing. And all those really, it's so much more. But pushing forward, what has really led to my development was when I read Shelley's work. That's what really gave me a story to tell. It gave me a voice, a narrative to tell. When I read Deconstructing Democracy, before I said, this is it. Because that sister hit out on the head. Because I always was conflicted about democracy. Now I understand I wasn't conflicted. I was right on point. It was right on point. And she shows that the contradictions and the imperfections in this thing that we call democracy, but also she goes beyond democracy. And then when we read the Vitality Code, and then the Code for a Healthy Earth and Eco Governance, and then I read Celeste's work before I came up on hers. I think, did you direct me to Shelley?
Yeah.
Celeste? Yeah, you told me about eco governance. And I said, wow, that's it. But so bringing it forward, I think Shelley's work and Celeste's work and other people, it's accumulation of all the readings that I've done. And my saving grace when I was in Bedlam, when I was in the belly of the beast, was reading. I remember some guys used to say, man, you read them effing books, you read them effing books and you use these big words. I should say, brother, the biggest word in the English language is 27 letters long. And I'm sure you're bigger than that. They would shut them down.
I bet.
Shut them down, 27. But the reading was my saving grace. But reading stories of victory, reading stories of life, these men spoke to life, to giving, to create. One of the things that, in John, excuse me, some other people I'm not mentioning, but one of the things, all the African intellectuals and African and diaspora intellectuals who wrote about the African slave trade, and also pre-colonial Africa, pre-African slave trade Africa, when they wrote about the contributions Africa made to the world, to human civilization, continuity. One thing that they missed out on. Oh, and also our guy, the peace diet. And the peace diet, Salesh?
What's that?
Diet. Peace diet.
The World Peace Diet. Yeah, Will Tuttle.
Will Tuttle.
Will Tuttle. Oh, yeah.
He was another big influence on me. Will Tuttle point out in his all these here, and even at the writings of Karl Marx and all in which heavily influenced the world, and all the Kent and all these here people, what they left out was the relationship of humans to food, and how that really shapes our culture, our thought, and the environment, and all of that. And that's what really really have me on this journey right now, is this connection our relationship to food, how we organize society around food. And in all society, civilization has been organized around food. How you get the food, how you produce the food, how you distribute the food. And then we develop social around that, you know. So it's been a lot, but I'm right. And I really thank you for your work, Deborah. One of the things that I want to talk about, and I like Shelley work so much and such work. And I like what the animal advocates rights people are doing. But one thing for people of color, and I'm speaking for myself and the people I know of people of color, is that we hear so much about animal rights, but you're not hearing any conversation, or very little conversation about white supremacy or racism. You know, we hear that multiple, and what that creates for me is a separation and division, because we all want the same thing: live in peace and harmony on it, and to have full equality and participation for everyone. But when the about there, you hear the animal rights people, and they're not talking about racism. They're not talking about white supremacy. That makes people of color say, okay, they doing their thing, and we're gonna do our thing. We just gonna fight racism. We just gonna fight white supremacy. Well, it's still a separation and education and a fragmentation. Fighting racism over here and white supremacy, and you're over here fighting animal rights, and then one's over here fighting mass incarceration, and then like we are so fragmented. So I'm hoping what this conference can do is bring us together. Bring us together.
And here we
I gotta
are.
call. Okay, I'm not going. I'm not going. Okay. And okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's reversing it around. You know, rather than a rights-based discourse, it should be a responsibility discourse. And because right now, you know, human beings, we organize ourselves, as you pointed out, around food, and we organize ourselves by telling stories.
Can bring you over here because I'm on a very
And we also organize ourselves by playing games. So then we set up rules for these games. You know, how do we decide who's the
Hey Wayne, I'm on
how do
a
we make
very
decisions, and how do we decide who's the winner, who's the
bring-
loser? So that's the kind of discourse that's been going on in the old model. And what we are trying to do here is to reverse the whole thing around. Okay, because that's how we should be doing things. In fact, just on the food issue, you know, I was talking to Aisha Robinson just before this on our podcast. And so she's this young Black woman who's been going around feeding people in Atlanta, Georgia. And at first, she had like a potluck, and she invited people to come and taste her food, and nobody came. You know, and she had potluck, nobody came. So then she decided, okay, this is not going to work. And so she said, I'm just going to cook food and give it to people. And she went around giving to people, and everybody started eating it. So she's distributed like, I don't know, what, 4,000 meals? Is that right? Around over 4,000 meals, I think. She has an organization called Vegan Meals That Heal. And people eat her food and they say, wow, I feel good. I feel better. And then they look forward to her coming back, you know, giving that food. So this is, again, as you pointed out, Melvin, you know, it's how do we organize around food, and how do we organize, like I tell the story of what used to happen in India a couple of 100 years ago. People wouldn't work for the British because the British were fighting a war with the French, and they needed people to come and build ships for them. And they couldn't get the Indians to come and build ships for them, even though there were plenty of trees over there, you know, to build the ships. And they discovered it's because Indians never paid for food. You know, we never had transactions on food. People just ate because there was plenty of food. People ate and they would, you know, go and share with each other. And because Indian food is fundamentally vegan to begin with. The base food is vegan, right? So everyone was well fed, so no one would be working for the British. So that's when they decided to tax all the villages in one specific kind of grain. So they would tax one village in rice, give us 50 bushels of rice or whatever. And another village, they would go tax in wheat, 50 bushels of wheat. And so people had to create monocultures to pay the tax man. And
Wow.
this is how they had to start transacting for food. And when we start transacting for food, then you get malnourishment, all kinds of things happening all over the place. And so the famines actually went up from, we used to have famines once every 100 years before that. And then after the British imposed these taxes, it became once every 10 years. We had famines in India. So it's reversing that whole thing. That was the colonization of food system that happened, right, in India. And so it's decolonizing that food system and creating healthy food and making it easily and freely available to everybody. So this is the mission of food healers, and that's what I wanted to do there. But the constitution discussion is about how do we organize ourselves in this new model in which we are not transacting. We are just taking responsibility. We're not about asserting rights. It's about saying, who is going to do what, who fits best where, right? So it reverses it. And so I think it's going to reverse the whole way in which we look at how we organize ourselves, like the kinds of games we play. Because our games today are all about who's the winner, right? And the rest are all
Right.
losers. So we have, these tournaments where we determine who's the winner. So we teach that to our children as well, and we kind of make that normal in our society. So we're always looking for who's the winner of the World Series, who's the winner of Super Bowl. I mean, and all these games are all literally war games, right? I mean, this is like mini war games that we're playing. And so that's the way the caterpillar is organized, because that's how you heat up the planet, right? So now we are in the chrysalis phase. In the chrysalis phase, we have sufficiency. So we are looking at how do we distribute our resources correctly, properly, and how do we stay within our bounds of the planet? Okay, so so I think to do that, you really have to play a money game in which money is flowing from the bottom up, not from the top down. Because it's through the money game that we create this competition. We create these stories. Yeah, so that's the Aquarius money game that we are talking about, that we've been working on. And getting that sorted out, getting that implemented, that's the next step. That's a very important step. And Melvin has said that he's going to be the first member of Aquarius, the first person to use Aquarius. I'm looking forward to that. So that, I think, reverses even the, how do we take this current model, which is, legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch, and so on, which is all about funneling power to fewer and fewer people at the top, right? To make decisions and leaving them up to it. And instead, it is figuring out how to do distributed decision making and how to coordinate across distributed decision making processes, right? And making sure that the collective intelligence comes through in the process. Okay, so it's actually a very scientific way of doing this, as opposed to understanding how the processes work, and therefore making sure that you are designing it for the maximum utilization. So yeah, that's
Thank you both, Celeste.
I had a question, Deborah. Are you ready to talk?
Sure.
Do you have something to say? And I'll stop.
Oh, well, you can go first and I can go after. I can be patient.
But I can't. The thing with the, talking about new governance and stuff, there was this part of what Shelley had talked about, which, you actually see it emerging, are these reinvigorated collections of individuals that are almost like advisory boards or councils, rallying around speaking on behalf of the earth in one way or another.
Mhm.
You know, we see these like groups forming of these individuals. So it's automatically like people's inner calling is drawing them to speak up in some way. And I think that, you know, that's something that we need to consider is, you know, these voluntary individuals who are being called uh, to to advise on certain aspects of governance. So it's kind of more tribal, I think, the way indigenous perhaps have worked. I know for a fact that in the universe there are bajillions of councils, and some people channel them and work for them on this side of the veil. So if it runs that way in the universe, I would imagine that we might want to emulate that on Earth, especially if we're getting kicked up a couple of notches in vibration and whatnot. So that I think is something really important, is to institute the concept of having councils to advise community or you know, to advise governance in certain areas, you know, to move forward. So thank you. So as opposed to a strictly elected
Right.
body of governments, that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Go ahead, Melvin.
Melvin,
Okay. Thank you, Denny. Am I
Danny.
saying Denny? Yeah. And Deborah, you know, Shelley's work resonate with me so strongly, so deeply, because when she said the only legitimate purpose of governance is cultivate the health and the vitality of the earth for 7 generations to come. That is so pervasive and so broad. You know, so if we talk about having coming up with a constitution, I don't know any better. I mean, maybe someone could find some better, some other ways to work. But just that, the only legitimate purpose of governance is cultivate the health and the vitality of the earth for 7 generations to come. And the other, this that's eco government, but her codes for a healthy earth resonates so strongly with me.
Mhm.
And I'm not a very diverse, well-read person. I'm really not. I've just read a few books in my life. But what I've read from Shelley and Shailesh's work, it resonates so strongly with me because uh, we have to shift from, as Shailesh was saying, from this competitive model that we have where there's a winner, this is form where you have this here, your executive branch, your legislative, your judiciary branch, where in essence power is going up in the hands of a few people. And as Denny was saying, having these councils, and I like Shelley described how these councils should work on a local basis, where they're making decisions that's really relevant to their local situation, but it's connected to the whole. Talk about whole systems health and healing, whole system health and healing. Codes is offers a foundational framework for whole systems health and healing to support, you know, citizens across ideological, cultural, and national boundaries, where we can have this radical systems transformation and rapid social and ecological regeneration. And that really resonates very strong with me. And now that I've been into to you, Deborah, I see you bringing in a whole different spiritual part of this here, because one of the things that Shelley talked about and resonates strongly with me is core needs. If people core needs are not met, and been a counselor for a long time, people who are in dire straits, you want to bring counseling to them, but this don't have any shoes. This person utilities cut off. He don't give a fuck about counseling or making. You need some water, some
Right.
food. And this is why I like a approach where Silas we talking about is food. When people gonna have their basic core need, then we can start talking about it. It's sort of like that Maslow thing, this hierarchy of needs. You can have your basic core needs met, I think, and then we can start talking about these higher. You was saying about the ego and the higher ego. I don't know. You said you have the ego, and then up here it's more of a spiritual thing. You were saying, and we have to help. If we can get to the point where needs for people could be met, I think that's when people are very, very receptive to the other part, the inner working, the inner working. If you're hungry, if you're starving, if you're facing eviction, like so many people right now are so stressed out with that because I'm not feeling it. Because I have a roof over my head and I have a couple of dollars in my pocket, some gas in my car and some food in my refrigerator. But it's so many people who are being evicted, are going to be evicted, and they have deep, deep anxiety. And it is so pervasive, and that really touches me that somebody's going to be homeless, or people are homeless. So I think meeting people core needs, and that's one thing that Shelley talks about all the way through the codes for a healthy earth, is meeting people core needs. So, developing this constitution, I really want to be a part of that, make some contribution to it. And I think that Shelley really got a core start, we can look at, for this constitution, because it addresses leadership. And she said, like you were saying about your uncle, he was trying to do this for 50 years, but he didn't have people there who understood, who bought into whole systems, right. Health and healing. You understand that? Most people just want to fix an isolated problem. And we have to change our narrative to whole systems, health and healing. So I'm just putting it out there. I really think Shelley is right on point, and other people too, in terms of developing a constitution that can help us move forward and change the story. I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna say this one more thing about Shelley's work so much, is that it decolonizes thinking. So many people have a colonial mindset of looking at problems, looking at life, looking at situations, organizing life, organizing food. It's all from a colonial mindset, and don't even know is that mindset. But Shelley's work is about the decolonization. It speaks to life, the vitality code. It speaks to life and working with nature. She's talking about how can we organize societies just the same way nature is organized. And I believe that's possible for us. It's a lot of work, but if enough of us start doing it, we can get it going. Even though there's so much work in the other direction. Look at you look at Amazon and all these here big multinational corporations. We look at what they're doing. Excel, a share doing just their earth, and we've done individually all. But I'm not part of that anymore. Because of the way I live, I try to live.
So, yeah, I just wanted to say that when we work with nature, when we work with, again, the universal laws, I don't want to preach that, but there is less effort needed on our part because we have all the energies around us working with us. And the resources magnetically show up because we are vibrating. And that's why it's important that we have the education that we need so that we can make the internal shifts. It all starts right here with each one of us. And when we each make those internal shifts, the universe is conspiring for us no matter what we do. But when we are off track, the universe is showing us, it's magnifying the off track part so that we can see that we're off track and get back on. So it's a whole different deal when we work from the place that we're talking about. And I want to thank both Sailesh and Melvin for your sharings, because it reminded me, especially when you were talking about the suffering, the intense suffering that is so prevalent everywhere. And what occurred to me when you were talking, Melvin, was the term, the phrase, know thy enemy. And it was just interesting that that came to me, because I'm defining that a little differently than when I first heard it decades ago. But when we know suffering, and most people think of suffering as the enemy. I mean, there's lots of causes for that. White supremacy is one of them. And as a white person in America, growing up this way with white supremacy all around me, including in my own family, I've been horrified my whole life about that. It never resonated with me, but I was immersed in it for a reason, so that I can come to know what makes it tick, so that I can come to understand what is missing in that frequency of greed and authority as the all prevailing powers. And I have learned what is missing in that frequency. And each one of us in our own way has learned what is missing in those lower frequencies of existence. And we are here to bring those back to the earth experience, to the human experience. And because we have, on some soul level or whatever level, because we were willing to experience that, to be immersed into an environment that didn't support us.
Right.
Here we are sitting here talking about love and heart and what matters. And that is, we are a product of those experiences. And those who are suffering, all they need, well, this might be an understatement, but what is most needed there is a ray of light, a ray of hope. And when that ray of light comes in, there is a transformation, a transmutation that happens. And I have had that experience as well. So I know that when it gets to a point where it feels like everything is lost, I just want to die, I just don't want to do this anymore, it is possible for grace to come in, because when all of the resistance is surrendered, there is room for grace. In resistance, we're shut down. In resistance, when I was resistant to the whole white supremacy and everything that I experienced growing up, when I realized that by being angry and fighting against that, I was actually adding to it, I was like, oh, that's not what I meant. That's not the deal. That's not, that's not the way we're going to get to the other side of this. You can't fight against something without giving it energy. And like you said, Melvin, I will not participate in that. So all I can do is step away and be in a place of love. And that adds what is missing. And that's how we, if we can approach everything that we do from that place, we will succeed in creating something that makes the old obsolete.
I like to look at it this way too, Deborah. What if everybody felt and knew what it was like to have to be loved unconditionally? You know, what would the world look like if everybody knew and felt that they were loved unconditionally, which is the truth, and could just allow themselves to put that on themselves, because the conditioning is so anti that. It's so, you know, such control. So when I think of like the things that we want to do, you know, and how we want to save the planet, I think of what would it look like if everybody felt unconditionally loved, and how that changes, you know, the whole perception. And then, you know, you can start with you, because as you change, how many people do you affect? You know, your consciousness, your awareness, your love for yourself, you know, which is the hardest freaking thing. I don't know why, because it's just like it's so you're taught just not to go there. And who knows what, I don't know what God's love feels like, but somehow I stumbled on love for myself. So it must be the same thing. Do you know what I mean? If you don't come up with it. So, you know, why not start there? Why not start there? What were you going to say? I stepped on you.
No, that's all beautiful. It's all perfect. something came in as a response to something that you said, but we have it all in us. And the reason that, Melvin, you were able to wake up with those books and turn things around in your own mind, in your own heart, is because you were exposed to truth. How many people don't have a reference point for what is true? They don't have a sense of it. This world is so convoluted and complicated and contaminated that it's difficult to know what's true. And if we don't have a reference point for truth or for love, especially unconditional love, most people have a reference point for love and it's pain. Love hurts. And so many people are not willing to go there because the only reference point they have for it is pain. It's like, why would I do that? I've been there, I've done that. And so that ray of hope, that ray of light, when we give ourselves permission to be the embodiment of that, then just being in proximity, just existing on this planet changes the potential for light to be birthed in the form of hope and new potential.
Yeah.
And I do believe that Shelley's work is a beautiful foundation for that. She's got it. The languaging, everything that she's said, put in that document, and all those documents are so beautifully done. And as far as organization goes, I'm working with another group. We've been working together for quite a while, and we have just reorganized our situation. I hope this is okay to share this because it's brand new, but it feels like it's the new model for organized change. And it's like, what is at the heart of the problem? We ask ourselves that all the time, right? So going to the heart feels really significant to me. That's where my answers come from, not from here. Yeah, there's understanding, but understanding only comes when the heart and the mind come together. Otherwise, it's just knowledge, and it's not the same as applied wisdom. And so we're using the heart as a model for how we're organizing the group and the work that we do. And there's 4 chambers in the heart. And those 4 chambers must be coherent in order for the heart to be healthy. When one chamber is not coherent, it throws the balance off, and the heart, even in our own microorganism, isn't functioning optimally. And we want optimal functioning along with the spirituality and the sacredness, the return of sacredness. And so taking and all of the original, at least all the ones that I know of, the original peoples have 4 pillars that they create their community on. 4 pillars, 4 chambers, 4 something, so what are the 4 pillars or the 4 chambers that are the foundation of what is at the heart of what we want to do? And if we start there and then use Shelley's work and all, and the One Tribe, there's so many beautiful pieces that are starting to migrate to our center already.
Yeah.
So maybe just put that question out. What are the 4 chambers of the heart, at the heart of what it is that we want to do, and how do we make sure that those 4 chambers are congruent before we go any further?
Yeah, if I might share something, and then we probably have to stop the meeting because we have gone over a little bit. And then for next week, I want to come with some diagrammatic version of what Shelley has written and offer it to the group. Okay, so that we can start with that. I just want to share something to show you before we close this. And it resonates with the 4 chambers that you're talking about, Deborah. This is the 4.
Oh, awesome. You already got it.
This is the 4 aspects of Dharma. So Dharma is Swadharma. It's the right thing to do for myself. Yuga Dharma, which is the right thing to do for the ecology around me, Kula Dharma, which is right thing to do for my community, and then Sanatana Dharma, which is right thing to do universally, which is love, based on love. So at the center of it is how you act. So that's how we are taught. Okay, that's the 4 chambers. In fact, even the Climate Healers brand book that Carl wrote, I made him do this, put this in there to show how these to be because Climate Healers is doing all these 4 things. We are trying to get to health, ecology, animals, and love, and spirituality. So, but I think from writing this idea of, writing a constitution, just some simple rules that we need to come up with for, okay, what does it mean to tell someone that you have unconditional love in the community that you belong to, right? So should mean that you are taken care of. You know that you're taken care of. Fundamentally, food is taken care of, shelter is taken care of, your shoes, your clothing is taken care of, meaning it's available. You go get it. Kimaya was asking me, why do we pay for things? What do we need money for, right? That's her fundamental question for some of these basic things that you need. Right? Anyway, so I'll start with that, and I'll start putting something together and bring it to you as an offering for next week, and then we can discuss that. Danny, you are.
So with
Yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I just as a side note, if we could use the raise, are we good using the raise hand, lower hand mechanism for these? And then
I'm
just making
seeing it,
sure.
and when I see it, I do call on you.
Okay, yeah, I just started it. That's all. I just threw it out this time. Does anybody here want me to take notes or make kind of a document, or maybe next week after Sailesh's introduction, then I can put some notes from the group together and post it on the website that I'm running, and then we can have a reference point for something that's like actually starting to evolve, if you're good, if people want to chime in. So we can do something like that, if that's kind of a vote around here, thumbs up on that, and we'll take that up next time. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
yeah, I just wanted to say that one other piece, especially here in the United States, maybe other places too, that I just want to bring it to your attention. When I was in Sedona doing my food project and creating communities around food, we went to a community garden, and there were the food banks that were in that area at that time didn't have enough fresh produce. They didn't have any fresh produce to speak of because it's too hard to store, and they didn't have room and not enough people offering it. And we changed that. But at the same time, we were working in community gardens, offering free classes to teach people how to grow their own food. And we went to one food bank, one of the big ones in the area, and posted this class. And we had 20 people signed up for the first class. And we were like, oh my God, we're going to be able to do this. This is awesome. And the plan was to have those people come and to give them a plot of land in the community garden and show them how to work it on their own. And so the first class came, and we were there, and nobody showed up, not one of the 20 people. And so we said, that's all right, we can do this. And so we set up another class, put it up there, 20 people signed up again. Nobody showed up at the class. That happened 3 times. For the people who put a phone number down, we called everyone who signed up for the class and said, we noticed that you signed up for this class 3 times, but you didn't come. What's going on with that? And every single phone call, the answer was, oh, well, it's just easier to go to the food bank. And so complacency and lack of power keeps many people from stepping out of the lack of power. And I don't know what the answer is for that, other than just continuing to continue and holding space for that to happen. But
right.
That's a piece that is very real, at least here, maybe in other places too.
Yeah. I mean, these are the things we need to work out in making sure that
Right.
the organization is going to be sustainable, right?
Right.
Because if you're not growing anything, you're expecting someone else to grow it and send it to you, then that should be visible in the model. People should see, hey, they are growing so much and we are not able to grow that, and we keep borrowing from them, taking from them. So that should, anyway, I think the idea of community should come into play there. So
Maybe
thank
we
you
can
all.
have
Go ahead.
I was going to say,
Samar.
maybe we can have gardens, food banks. And then if you say you want to get to the front of the line and be out of here quicker, show up early and do some gardening. And then once they start touching the earth and they get into that meditative space and they realize how awesome it is, maybe then they'll be like, yeah, I do want to do this in my own backyard. So,
We put gardens in 6 different schools and refurbished 3 more. And so we just decided maybe it's too late for the adults. Maybe we need to just work with the kids and get their hands in the soil.
Yeah.
And so we did that too.
Also, the whole idea of my backyard, that also is a problem, right? So that's where some of the things come from. Yeah.
yeah.
Plenty of people don't have backyards and property. I think of all these people in urban life. I think of vertical farming, for urban places. I mean, people who don't have space, people who are sleeping on the, in ridiculous temporary areas, it's just, I think one of the things in the Constitution is we have to really come to grips with the fact that we don't own a single thing except for our experience. That's all we ever own. We don't even own ourselves. There's so much spirit going through us and you can't contain it, right? So how could we say we own anything? I don't own my ears. My ears could fall off from some act of nature at any time. We don't even own the stuff on our body. So it's like relinquishing ownership could be one of the most liberating things for mankind.
Right.
And heartwarming, let's just share a space all the time, have a picnic. I mean, I try to think, what I want for myself. I want to perceive the child in everybody, because as far as I'm concerned, we're just a bunch of kids here to play. And if we get back to that, wow, kids on a playground, you share. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Great to see everyone's faces. And Melvin, wonderful to see your shining smile and your shining face too.
Thank you.
He's gonna give us the name of his dentist at any time now. I'm gonna make a phone call. All right, to next week.
Okay.
Next
see you
week.
Next week.
Thank you all so much. Love you all.
Thank
Lovely.
you.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.